biggest story in sports right now, Anthony. Is it still fresh enough that we can call it breaking news?
Yes, it is.
Breaking news!
Breaking news. Oh, snap. News is broken. Breaking news.
Damian Lillard has been traded, and it's not to the Miami Heat. Damian Lillard, in a 3-team trade, heads to the Milwaukee Bucks, where he will pair up with Giannis Antetokounmpo, also Thanasis. He's got his pick of it. Antetokounmpo. Giannis seems like the most important one. Drew Holiday headed out in return. He goes to Portland, and it's a 3-team deal involving the Phoenix Suns. DeAndre Ayton and some other assets going to Portland. To Phoenix go Grayson Allen, Yusuf Nurkic from the Blazers, Nasir Little, and Keon Johnson as well. The draft capital here, 2028, 2030 pick swaps between Milwaukee and Portland, if obviously the better pick is available from the Bucks, and then in 2029, no matter what, unprotected first-round pick from Milwaukee to Portland. So that is the way the trade looks. By the way, if you're streaming along on YouTube or you would like to see that in visual form, pull up YouTube real quick because I made a graphic and everything, Anthony. Very, very fancy. It's actually not that fancy, but it is very helpful to have the visual because there's a lot of moving pieces here. And the obvious first thing to talk about is like Dame to Milwaukee. I think it fundamentally changes who they are as a basketball team in a very interesting way. They have chosen to sacrifice the thing that makes them the absolute best. And to be clear, they're very good on both sides of the ball. But they were super elite on the defensive side of the ball. And that was because they had Giannis, who is, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, somewhere in there, best defender on the planet. Like, he's incredible. He guards multiple positions. He blocks shots. He gets steals. He gets deflections. He can guard 1 through 5. Like, he's a menace defensively. And Drew Holiday, who, for my money, is the best perimeter defender on earth and has been for a decade. And I kind of think it's ridiculous that he doesn't have more Defensive Player of the Year awards because there are few players I've ever seen play the sport who can just lock someone down the way Drew Holiday can make their life a living hell. Can he still do that at that level with consistency? And can he do it over the course of 82 games and a playoff run? I think that's probably the question in some level Milwaukee was asking themselves. But where Milwaukee really struggled, the one area that Drew bailed them out of at times, and Giannis has been able to bail them out of at times, and Chris Middleton has been able to bail them out of at times, is in the fourth quarter of a tight playoff game, when the game gets bogged down, do you have someone that can create a shot for you reliably? They do now. His name is Damian Lillard. And they are sacrificing in a major way defensively without Drew there to do this. They also sacrifice a real depth. Like, Grayson Allen's an important piece for them. He started a bunch of games, but at his best, he's probably a sixth man coming off the bench, obviously with Middleton coming back. They could play, 3-guard lineups, etc. But like that piece matters to them and their depth, and they're willing to do what I think you have to do when you're on a tight championship window. And I'll give even more background on why it's a tight championship window in a second. You have to make sacrifices and hope that it works out to better your ceiling. Because I don't think Milwaukee is looking at this as we're trying to build a contender for a decade anymore. They're looking at Giannis's contract situation and recent comments made by their superstar that have basically said, look, if I don't feel like we're on a path to a championship, and I don't feel like this front office is doing the things they need to do to be a champion, then I'm going to be out of here when my contract is up. And that contract is up. I don't know if it's this season, next season. I think it's 2 years from now. Giannis contract. That's something I should have double-checked before the show. I apologize. Typey, clicky. Why did I just say that into a microphone? Jesus Christ. He's up after next year. He's got a player option in 25-26. It's $51 million. And he's probably going to be able to opt out of that and sign for more. So that's a nice place to be in life, where you have $51 million. That's your choice to either accept or be like, no, please give me more. It's not a place I am right now. Yet. Need to grow a lot. become a better shooter. Reverse age.
Keep that hope alive, Craig.
Or come up with something completely away from sports that is worth a lot of money.
Yes.
$51 million player option. Can you imagine having the opportunity to turn down $51 million? Because they're going to give you more?
I can only imagine.
Must be nice.
Yep.
Must be nice to have Dame, too.
It's really nice to have Dame.
I mean, Dame last year, if he had stayed healthy throughout the entire year, would have been a first-team All-NBA player.
Yeah, no question.
He's still that good. And I think that this takes an offensive load off of Giannis. I think Giannis can coast a little bit more in the regular season because the burden is not going to be as high. Obviously, Dame, this is the best player that Dame will have played with by a mile, with all due respect to CJ McCollum and Carmelo and all these dudes that have gone through Portland over the years. Like, he is far and away the best player because Giannis might be the best player on the planet. Obviously, it's pretty silly to say anyone but Jokic after what he did in the postseason last year, but like Giannis is that good. And we are just a couple years away removed from anyone questioning Giannis being the best player on the planet, feeling very silly because he clinched the finals with a 50-point triple-double. Like, that's who that dude is. And so in a couple of years, we are going to see if this is ultimately enough because Dame, while he's still great, he's older. Like, he's in his mid-30s. He ain't going to play forever. He's a younger, smaller guard. Like, if his athleticism takes another hit, even a half step at his size, like, that's going to hurt. It isn't riskless. The defensive side of the ball is definitely a question there now. Like, who is going to be their on-ball defender? If I were them, I would call the Wizards about DeLon Wright, and I would do that today. I don't know what they have to offer anymore, but I would do that if I were them. But it's a pretty fascinating trade. It's a big swing by Milwaukee. And the other thing that we'll explore more next is it prevents him from going to Miami, who is perhaps their biggest competition. And so there is an addition by subtraction element where they subtract Dame from Miami, and now he's playing for them in Milwaukee. So that's the trade. We will discuss what it means for the Eastern Conference as a whole. Nevertheless, by the way, the Suns in this trade as well bolster their roster. What does it mean for the Western Conference? So we will take a look at the NBA landscape after a seismic shift. Damian Lillard headed to Milwaukee. We'll talk about it more next on the Hoffman Show. Basketball training camp is about to be underway. It means we get big trades like the Damian Lillard trade today. It also means that Media Day is around the corner. Do not miss a special digital-only event from your boys at the Hoffman Show. Coming up on Monday, Wizards Media Day, noon to 2, live coverage on the Team 980's YouTube page. Also be on 106.7 The Fan, so we'll simulcast on both stations' YouTube page. That is online only, digital only. We'll have interviews with Kyle Kuzma, Wes Unseld Jr., Corey Kispert, Denny Avia, Tyus Jones. So that is all Monday, noon to 2, streaming live on YouTube. And then as we get closer to the season, we'll play back some of those interviews for you here on the radio. As for the big NBA news of the day, how does it affect the Eastern Conference? The blockbuster trade between the Blazers, Bucks, and Suns that sends Damian Lillard to Portland. I think it's important to say that this is still a work in progress and trying to figure out how this totally affects the Eastern Conference, Anthony, because there's a chance that Drew Holiday comes back this way. Like, Drew, I was kind of chuckling because you played the Bruno song coming out of the break, and, you need a condo in Manhattan. Drew is not going to get a condo in Portland. I don't think he's going to get a condo in Manhattan either. But could he need one back where he started in Philadelphia? That's a report that started to emerge.
Ooh, okay.
A condo in Miami, maybe the one that Dame Lillard was looking at. That could definitely be on the table. So there is, I think, a really good chance that the Eastern Conference heats up even more because I don't think Drew Holiday he's definitely not staying in Portland. So it's kind of hard to grade this trade overall right now. But does that unlock the Harden deal somehow? Does Portland, Philly, LA Clippers, is that a 3-team deal that can somehow get worked? If not, I don't know what Portland's kind of in the same spot they were with Dame. Maybe they want less in return for Drew, and maybe that makes it feasible for Philly to do a 2-team deal. But Miami certainly, like, Portland knows what Miami was offering, and they might not have been willing to give it up for Lillard. But now that they've got all this other stuff for Lillard, will they do it for Holiday? So it's hard to like really understand exactly how the Eastern Conference is going to shake out, because I think Drew is going to wind up heading back this way. But I definitely think it's fair for us to look at it right now and see where things stand, how it stacks up.
Yeah, I definitely think Miami's an interesting destination, primarily because, they didn't get Dame. They lost out on Gabe Vincent and Max Strus. Mm-hmm. And then you have Tyler Herro, who wants money, but, management isn't necessarily ready to pull the plug. And
right.
then, there's this window that you have for, Kyle Lowry and Jimmy Butler, who are sort of kind of getting old. But Jimmy's got a little bit more time, but Kyle Lowry looks like, he's winding down a little bit. So I think that's an interesting destination just because they need reinforcements. They are the definitive champs from the Eastern Conference, and it doesn't look like, they've had all that good of an offseason.
Dude, if Miami gets Drew, they are going to be such a bore to play in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. Could you imagine? You got Bam on the back line with Jimmy and Drew guarding your perimeter players. Good night.
And the thing is, like, Drew has been able to unlock, his offensive side to his game, as of late. You mentioned it last segment about Drew, bailing him out in situations. He can still score. So I think,
Didn't he have 50 in a game last year?
I'm not sure over 50, but he's had some big games for the Bucks for sure. I don't think that's a bad, duo of him and Jimmy Butler. Granted, they're going to need a little bit more, but for starters, I would definitely, go with that.
He did. March 29th, end of the regular season last year, he had 51 against Indianapolis. So, yeah. So here I think people forget Milwaukee was the best team in the East last year. Mm-hmm. They were the 1 seed, and then they had that funky playoff series where Giannis gets hurt early, and it's just bad news bears all around, and ultimately they lose. So Milwaukee, though, I think would have to be like, I think they're the favorite. Like, I still think Giannis is the best player in the conference. He and Embiid are real close. Like, it's not some massive difference. And if you want to tell me I'm wrong, I thought Joel should have won the MVP last year. If I got to pick one for the long term, I'm picking Giannis. But if I get the second pick and wind up with JoJo, like, I'm fine. By the way, it's also worth mentioning that not involved in any of this, because they already made their moves, is the Boston Celtics. And if you tell me I get the third pick and I get Jason Tatum, I'm still pretty psyched as well. So the East is just freaking loaded. I would handicap it this way.
I think they're top-heavy loaded.
I think there's depth in the conference, too, to be honest, man.
Compared to the West?
Not compared to the West, but
Okay.
It's not like it's 1, 2, 3, and then you're done. Like, Cleveland and New York are good teams. Like, they're not championship good, but you mess around in a playoff series against them, like, you could get got.
But I just feel as though that's how the West is. The West has a lot of, legitimate contenders, and the West primarily got those 3, maybe 4, whatever, depending on whatever the Heat do. I don't know.
So here's the teams that I think can win the conference. Milwaukee, for sure. Boston, for sure. Philly can, as constructed, if Harden is not, who knows what James Harden's going to do. Let's be frank. But especially if they were to get Drew somehow.
Yeah.
Philly for sure. I think Cleveland's good enough to win the conference. I would not put them I put them in a second tier.
Yeah.
But Cleveland is young and good and getting better. Like, if guys like Evan Mobley take the next step, like, all of a sudden you're talking about him, you're talking about Garland, you're talking about Jared Allen, like Donovan Mitchell.
He's the guy that has to, come up huge for those guys.
He does, and he wasn't as good in some spots last year as he's been previously in Utah. But I think with those defensive guys, like, they're so young, if they take the next step, I think Cleveland's dangerous. I think New York is probably, like, in the same tier as Cleveland and maybe a little bit below them.
Yep.
But, like, I'm done doubting Jalen Brunson. That kid is ridiculous. And they made a couple of nice moves in the offseason. I think that Miami is obviously capable of winning the conference. And I think that's probably it. But, like, Chicago could be feisty, just as a pain in the butt.
Yep.
Atlanta can certainly be a pain in the butt. And if they are able to make a midseason move and add someone, like, who knows who the next star is that wants out, just Trae Young, able to pull them somewhere. Like, they were in the conference finals not that long ago. If Scotty Barnes can re-rack his career and get back on the right track, like, Toronto's an interesting team. Indiana is going to be feisty night to night. Washington's a total wild card. I have no idea what they're going to be, but they're going to be fun to watch, and they're going to score a bunch of points. Orlando, like, second half of the year last year, they're on to something. How much can Banchero and Wagner and other Wagner, how much can those guys grow? And then Charlotte is terrible, and Detroit should be better than they were as the league worst team last year, but is not good. The West has so many teams, like you said, but I do think this affects Phoenix in a very positive way.
Yeah.
Like, Phoenix was a team that I was concerned about their depth, obviously, when they made the Durant Beal, moves. I think that they obviously did a good job in free agency getting the league minimums and the kind of stuff that you do when you're a team that's got that kind of talent. But, like, they picked up some specific skills that I think are very intriguing and make me feel a lot better about their bench. Like, Grayson Allen is a big pickup for them.
Yep.
A guy who can handle the ball, get the ball in the hands of others, take some of the ball handling duties off of Beal and Booker, can play a little point, but is a very, very good spot-up shooter and is a pretty solid defender, and can guard point guards. Like, you can take that responsibility off of Beal and Booker night to night so that they're not wasting their energy guarding the Steph Currys, etc. Yusuf Nurkic is extremely useful for them, specifically in the Denver matchup, because you need someone to bang with Jokic. And while no one's good at guarding Jokic, like, Nurkic is at least big enough that he's not just going to get bullied.
Yep.
And that's something that DeAndre Ayton was not. Yep. So that to me, specific to this team, is an upgrade. Ayton's the better player, obviously. But if Nurkic is, 90% of what he used to be, that's a big thing for them. Nasir Little's a nice player. I don't know much about Keon Johnson, if I'm being honest. But those are the other guys that are in the play. But, like, Little is going to be a very good fit with them. He's super athletic, can get out on the wing and run with all those dudes. So, should be interesting. Clint Yates, I'm sure, has thoughts on all of this, the Damian Lillard trade. We will check in with him for his Wednesday visit next here on The Hoffman Show.
This is The Hoffman Show on the T980 and the Odyssey app.